Hello and welcome to Warhammer Wednesday. In this week's video I will be reviewing the Sector Mechanicus Sacristan Forgeshrine. It's basically the new Imperial Knight kind of depot, resupply, rearmament kind of piece of scenery that Games Workshop have recently released alongside some of the new Imperial Knights that they released. And I want to say this model cost you £25, which isn't too bad. So the kit itself, it does say made in the UK, which is very odd because it's the same kind of hard plastic with the annoying mould lines in places as all of the China-made scenery kits that Games Workshop do. I think most, if not all, 99% of Games Workshop scenery is made in China. Just look at the back. I don't know whether they've changed that recently and they've now put made in the UK, but you can definitely tell the difference between this plastic. It's kind of a darker, harder plastic than the normal kind of lighter, softer plastic, more detailed plastic that Games Workshop use for their miniatures that are made in the UK. But don't let that put you off. It's still a nicely detailed model miniature, and of course it goes well with all of the other Sector Mechanicus terrain that they released, I think a couple of years ago, you know, with the crates and everything like that. And I think it will be a nice variation with the new Kill Team scenery that Games Workshop are going to be bringing out soon, which I will be focusing on in a video if I haven't done that already. So the kit itself, very straightforward, simple to build. You'll have this done in a couple of hours, if that. Just clip it off the sprue, cut all the little extra pieces off, and then file it down. My best advice is to file it down before you assemble anything, because there are some parts that are going to be difficult for you to get to once it's complete. But once it's made, there you go. You've got the model. It's all fixed. It's one kind of model, one kind of piece of scenery. I glued mine like that on purpose, as if it's just ejecting it or someone's just left it there. You can, of course, you know, put the plasma core all the way in, or to the side like they have done in their picture. But I've just put it there. You've got a little toolbox here and a tiny little fire extinguisher, and this crane that actually does fit quite nicely on there, but it's not, you know, maybe it does extend to probably there. But I was just expecting more kind of cranes and things, and, you know, I say articulation, more kind of supports and limbs and arms just around this thing, refueling it. I would have expected some weapons, even like some missiles maybe, but there's nothing stopping you if you've got a couple of spare shield breaker missiles, propping them up against one of the pipes or near the crane or something like that, just to add a bit more depth and variety. But as I said, it's quite a straightforward, simple model to build. You won't have any issues at all, and I like the fact that it's just one kit that you can just put in your box and take it around with your Imperial Knights. I mean, Imperial Knights are pretty big models to cart around anyway, and this isn't too big really in the grand scheme of things, but you could take this around and a couple of armigers and maybe a couple of knights, and there's your Imperial Knight army. So there you go, that is the Sacristan Forgeshrine. I do like the details on it. It does use a lot of the parts from the Sector Mechanicus set that came out, I think, a couple of years ago, like the big servo skull kind of thing. The new pieces is this kind of like console hub thing with like vents in the back, if you can see that. Obviously I think the plasma cores are, I think this piping is, the crane and the little toolbox kit, but the walkway and the piping and the furnace thing and these supports and the gantry kind of fences and things like that, they're all, we've seen them before. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring your attention to that, kind of like the new pieces. I think that might be from the Promethean pipeline, I want to say, but it might not be. These parts might be completely new. Anyway, that is the Sacristan Forgeshrine. I'll just do a few size comparisons. Obviously, you know, here's a little Space Marine and a Primaris Space Marine on top. So just imagine them, you know, leaping up from there next to a Contemptor Dreadnought, that is. And then you've got a Armiger, the smallest Imperial Knight. And then you've got the Errant, which, you know, doesn't really fit doesn't really fit in the bay there. It's a very tight fit if one would have to. It sort of like have to be kind of like there maybe. Either way, it's going to rub on the shoulder pauldrons, and that's not just because the base is there. It's going to be tight for that knight to get there, but I'm sure they manage. And then next to the Castellan, which I think they advertise it with or next to, yeah, even with the base squeezing it's not gonna. Just the physics of it doesn't work just because of these shoulder pauldrons and things. I mean, it can get quite close in like there. That kind of works on the side. If you wanted to be kind of have it as a realistic kind of like fueling station, rearmament station, I'm going to talk about all the rules in detail. The kit does come with the rules in the instruction book, like most of the scenery pieces, which is excellent. You don't need to buy the codex specifically, just like with the Imperial Knights, their rules come in their instruction books. But in addition, the rules are in the new Imperial Knight Codex too. So that's kind of like the size comparison next to these Imperial Knights. So it does look like a great, like a, you know, refueling, rearmament station, especially when you've got them all around it as the main part to, you know, but it doesn't look as specific enough to be that. There's no kind of Imperial Knight iconography, there's no kind of banners or flags. It is kind of very much Mechanicus, Sector Mechanicus kind of feel to it. I would have liked some kind of regal to it, some kind of like banners or whatever, some gold enshrined, some, you know, just some areas to put some gold on as well. I understand that obviously it's very kind of Mechanicus focused, but if you are building a Mechanicus Mars Knightly house or whatever, then this is going to be right up your street, because it's definitely going to fit in with your colour schemes and the metal, and if you've got any Mechanicus forces as well, definitely going to fit into that vibe more than if you've got like a, you know, bright green or bright yellow Imperial Knight rolling up to one of these dirty, dank kind of refueling stations. But it does its job. And obviously does its job in the game as well, which we'll now talk about. So the Sacristan Forgeshrine, you find its rules in the box itself, and also on the last page of the data sheets in your brand new 8th edition Warhammer 40,000 Imperial Knights Codex. It's a fortification, rules wise, not a Lord of War like the others. Its power points cost is only a 4, which is tiny, especially with what it brings to the table. Its points is it's 80 points, and you don't have to spend any points on anything else. It's just a base points cost of 80, and in my opinion, totally worth it. Totally worth bringing it with your army. Even if it's not a main Imperial Knight force, I'd still try and bring one of these anyway. 80 points is nothing. That's less than 8 shield breaker missiles, or it's half the points cost of an Armiger Warglaive, just half the points cost of one. For what it does on the battlefield is tremendous. So let's talk about that. It's a single model, and it's a structure. So after it's set up, it's treated as a Sector Mechanicus terrain feature. So that means it can't move, and it's not treated as a friendly or an enemy model. However, it can also not be targeted or affected by any attacks or abilities. So you're not shutting this thing down. You're not blowing it up. You're not knocking off wounds, there's no armor value, no save, no arm penetration, nothing like that. It's gonna stay there as a permanent fixture, which means it's invincible, let's face it. Unless they can fly, vehicles, monsters, cavalry and bikers can only be set up and end their moves on the ground floor of a Sector Mechanicus structure. Unless they can fly, infantry, beasts and swarms must scale ladders, girders or walls to ascend or descend between different levels of a Sector Mechanicus structure. Infantry are also assumed to be able to traverse around girders, buttresses and hanging chains, and so move through them without impediment. Infantry, units that are entirely on a Sector Mechanicus structure receive the bonus to their armor saves for being in cover. Other units that are entirely on the structure only receive this bonus if at least 50% of every model is obscured from the point of view from the shooting unit. Now, they're kind of like the main abilities. So right here, I'm going to talk about the Auto Sacristan. This is specific for your Imperial Knight models. At the end of your movement phase, one Imperial Knight's vehicle from your army that is within 1 inch of the model can use the Forgeshrine's Auto Sacristan. If it does so, it cannot shoot or charge this turn, and its attacks characteristic is reduced to 1. But you can then choose and resolve one of the following effects. So you get your Imperial Knight, end the movement phase 1 inch of the Forgeshrine, and then you can choose these different rituals and rites. You've got a ritual of repairing, a ritual of reloading, and a rite of refueling. Now the ritual of repairing, the vehicle regains D3 lost wounds. That's alright. There's a good chance you'll get 2, maybe 3 lost wounds back up. However, if there is a tech priest or tech marine from your army on the Sacristan Forgeshrine and they have not used their ability to repair another vehicle this turn, they can aid in the ritual of repairing instead of using that ability this turn. If they do so, the vehicle regains 3 lost wounds instead. That's quite nice. Statistically though, you are going to get 2 or more wounds regained anyway, so it's up to you whether you want to spend extra points and things having the tech priest or tech marine. It might be worth just having a little tech priest there, just a cheap little unit. If you think that your knights are going to suffer a lot of damage, like you say you've got a valiant and the valiant's going to have to trudge a long way to get anywhere because it's the 22-inch effective range kind of thing, then it might be worth the valiant just stopping off at this and regaining the 3 wounds and then carrying on. The second auto Sacristan effect is called the Ritual of Reloading. If the vehicle is equipped with shield breaker missiles, it regains all shield breaker missiles it fired previously in the battle. If it is not, or if it has its full complement of shield breaker missiles, choose one weapon the vehicle is equipped with, not an heirloom of the noble houses. The next time it is fired, it always makes the maximum number of attacks, e.g. heavy 2d6 weapon will fire 12 shots. That's horrific. So again, like the Valiant, if you're using the Valiant and it's taken 2 or maybe 3 turns to get, I'll probably say 2 turns, it's taken 2 turns to get here, you've got to weigh up the options. You can either get those 2 shield breaker missiles back, or 3 if it's been 3 turns, or you can go for regaining those 3 lost wounds. Likewise, get your Castellan in there the turn after, maybe, because you want to keep it quite far back. Then suddenly you've got 9 strength 14 volcano lance shots, or 12 strength 7 plasma decimator shots. It's your choice. You can choose to regain the wounds when the Valiant gets there, and then choose to completely unload with the heavy weapons of the Castellan when that gets there. You probably only got one or the other, but it's a nice ritual. And the final effect for this ability is the Rite of Refueling. Until the end of your next movement phase, increase the move characteristics of the vehicle by 6 inches. You might want to use that for your Imperial Knight Gallant. For an extra movement phase, I don't think that's really that much worth it. Only by 6 inches. It does mean that it's going to be moving 18 inches, which is quite horrific. Likewise, if you want to use an Armiger Warglaive, it is going to be moving 20 inches, which is colossal. But it's up to you. And the final note, a vehicle can only use an auto Sacristan once per turn, which is self-explanatory. It gets there at the end of the movement phase, it uses it, that's fine. Next turn, it can use it again. You could have a stack of 3. You could have the Warglaive getting there first and then slingshotting itself past that at 20 inches. Then the Valiant turns up, you regain those lost wounds or shield breaker missiles, and then finally the Castellan shows up and fires 9 volcano lance shots. So you can have a little bit of a queue forming for them to use this, and it does have a lot of potential. Regaining the wounds is nice. Typically you're going to get 2 or more anyway, so it's up to you whether you want to pay kind of like the tech marine tax, as it were. The Rite of Refueling is nice, but it's very situation specific. But the Ritual of Reloading is really where it's at. It's restocking those shield breaker missiles and also pumping out the full number of shots from those heavy weapons. Finally, the keywords are Imperium, Imperial Knights, Sector Mechanicus, Sacristan Forgeshrine. So there you go. That's my review of the Sacristan Forgeshrine. Did Imperial Knights need something like this? I think they did. I would have liked a smaller one and probably a larger one, rather than this just kind of medium-sized one. Maybe one just focused on refueling. Maybe something to do with the Promethean pipelines, to use them. Maybe something to use the furnace or other terrain features to get people to buy Sector Mechanicus a bit more. The actual terrain sets, that would have been great. But as it stands, it's a great addition. If you've got an Imperial Knight army, I wouldn't leave home without one. They're just too beneficial and they could turn the tide. Imperial Knights have got a lot of wounds already. You're pushing 24, 28 wounds. To regain 3 is very nice. You don't have to roll, you just have to roll the D3. You don't have to roll again or anything like that. You just get them. It's not like you roll a D3, oh, we can get 3, and then you have to roll a 4+ to get those 3. It's nothing like that. You get them, you get your shield breaker missiles instantly, and to be able to have maximum fire output on those heavy weapons definitely is worth it. When you think it's a difference between statistically sort of 6 shots with a Volcano Lance and 9, that's a 30% increase in firepower, and a 50% increase for like the conflagration cannon. If statistically you're looking at sort of 50 getting 6 out of the 12. Hopefully my maths are sort of correct in those examples, but please do put it in the comments below. But as always, I'd greatly appreciate if you put it in the comments below kind of what the best kind of tactic is for the Sacristan Forgeshrine, or what you've used it for in a game and did it make much of a difference. It'd be great to hear from you as always. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.